If you've ever hired someone who wasn't your full-time employee, maybe a freelance graphic designer, a consultant, or even a handyman, chances are you've heard the phrase, you need to 1099 them. But what does that really mean? And more importantly, how do you make sure you're doing it correctly? Today we're breaking down everything you need to know about 1099s, who actually needs one, the two forms you'll most likely use with freelancers, and how to fill them out step by step. Hi, I'm Noel Lorenzana, a registered certified public accountant and one of OnPay's expert contributors. Let's dive in. First things first, what exactly is a 1099? Think of it as a receipt or payment summary that you share with both the IRS and the person you paid. When you pay someone who isn't your employee for work they've done, the IRS wants to know about it. The 1099 form is how you tell them. There are actually several types of 1099 forms, but the two you'll likely deal with the most are the 1099 NEC and the 1099 MISC. The NEC stands for non-employee compensation. That's for independent contractors, non-employees. The 1099 MISC is for miscellaneous payments like for rent, royalties, other income, or attorney fees. Here's the point. You're not just sending this form to the IRS. You're also giving a copy to the person you've paid. This way, they'll know exactly how much you paid them, and the IRS can check that they're reporting this income on their tax return. It's kind of like a checks and balances system. Now, before we get into the how-to, you may be wondering how you know if someone needs a 1099 in the first place. This comes down to whether the person you paid is an employee or an independent contractor, and many business owners get tripped up here. Here's the general rule. If someone's your employee, you don't give them a 1099. Instead, you give them a W-2 at the end of the year. But if they're an independent contractor, that's when you need the 1099. Make sense? So how do you tell the difference? The IRS looks at three main factors: behavioral control, financial control, and relationship type. Let's break them down. Behavioral control. Do you control how the work gets done? If you're telling someone when to work, where to work, and exactly how to do the job, they're probably an employee. Financial control. Do they have their own business expenses? Can they make a profit or a loss? Independent contractors typically have more financial risk and investment in their work. Relationship type. Do you provide benefits? Is this an ongoing relationship or a specific project? Employees typically get benefits and have ongoing relationships, while contractors are usually hired for specific projects. That's a quick general summary, but just know, you as the employer don't get to decide if someone is an employee or an independent contractor. It's determined by the facts and circumstances. We also have a video that breaks down worker classification in more detail, which you can watch next. All right, so you've determined someone is an independent contractor. Do they automatically get a 1099? Not necessarily. There's a magic number here, $600. If you paid an independent contractor $600 or more during the tax year 2025 and earlier, you need to send them a Form 1099 NEC. Now here's something to keep in mind for future planning. This threshold is set to increase to $2,000 starting in 2026. That's with the passing of the One Big Beautiful Bill. In the years following, it will be inflation adjusted. Now, there are exceptions to point out. For corporations, generally, you don't need to send a 1099 to incorporated businesses. So if you hired ABC Marketing, LLC, and they're set up as a corporation, no 1099 needed. However, and this is important, there are exceptions to this exception. If you paid attorney fees, you need to send a 1099 MISC even if the attorney is incorporated. The same goes for payments to medical providers in some cases. Goods versus services. Regarding goods versus services, you only send 1099s for services, not for purchasing goods. So If you bought $1,000 worth of office supplies from a vendor, no 1099 needed. But if you paid someone $2,500 to install office equipment, then yes, you'd likely need a 1099, unless they're incorporated, in which case a 1099 may not be required. Before you can fill out a 1099, you need information from your contractor. This is where the W-9 form comes in. It tells you their legal name, business name if they have one, and their address. And most importantly, their tax identification number. That's either their social security number or their employer identification number. Here's a word of advice. Get that W-9 before you start working with any contractor. Don't wait until the end of the year when you're scrambling to get tax forms done. Now, suppose a contractor refuses to give you a W-9. That should ring some alarm bells, because this form is there to protect both you and the contractor. That could be a sign to move on. For more info on why you want the W-9, we linked a video in the description. Now let's talk about which form to use. This used to be more confusing, but the IRS simplified it a few years ago. Use Form 1099 NEC when you're paying independent contractors for services. This covers most situations such as graphic designers, consultants, freelance writers, contractors who did work on your office, etc. Use Form 1099 MISC for other types of payments such as rent you paid to a landlord, royalty payments, attorney fees, prizes and awards, medical payments, or generally other income. The easiest way to remember this is if you're paying someone for work they did and they're not your employee, it's probably a 1099 NEC. For most other business payments, it's likely a 1099 MISC. Okay, let's get into the nuts and bolts of actually filling out these forms. For Form 1099 NEC, it's pretty straightforward. Box 1 is where you put the total amount you paid the contractor during the year. Let's say you paid your web designer $2,400 throughout the year. That's what goes in Box 1. Box 2 is just a checkbox asking if you made direct sales of $5,000 or more for resale. Most businesses can ignore this. Box 4 is for federal income tax withheld. This would only apply if you had to do backup withholding, which is usually rare. Then you fill in the state tax information if applicable, though most contractors handle their own state taxes. Moving on to Form 1099 MISC, there are more boxes, but you'll typically only use a few. Box 1 is for rent payments, Box 2 for royalties, Box 10 for attorney fees, Box 3 for other income that doesn't fit in other categories. The key is to put the payment in the right box based on what type of payment it was. Timing is very important with 1099s. Here are the dates to know. January 31st is your deadline for both forms. You need to send copy B to the contractor and file copy A with the IRS by this date. Don't wait until the last minute. Mail can be delayed and you don't want to deal with penalties. Now here's something really important that trips up a lot of people. You can't just print out any old version of the form from the internet and mail it to the IRS. Copy A. This is the one that goes to the IRS. This needs to be the official scannable version. It's printed in red ink, not black, because the IRS machines need to be able to scan it properly. You can order these forms free from the IRS website, or you can file electronically if you have more than a few forms to submit. For the contractor's copy, that's copy B. You can print that one out on regular paper since they're just using it for their personal records. Allow me to share some mistakes I see business owners make all the time. Mistake number 1, waiting until January to get W-9 forms. Get these up front or you'll be chasing down people at tax time. And trust me, that's not fun. Mistake number 2, sending the wrong copy to the IRS. Remember, copy A needs to be the special scannable version. Mistake number 3, including payments for goods. Only include payments for services. Mistake number 4, forgetting about the corporate exception. You usually don't need a 1099 corporations except for attorneys and some medical providers. Mistake number 5, the $600 threshold is missing. Remember to add up all the payments to a contractor for the entire year. If the total is $600 or more in 2025 or earlier, they need a 1099. But remember, this threshold is increasing to $2,000 in 2026. Once you send out the 1099s, your job's mostly done. The contractor will use their copy when preparing their tax return, and the IRS will match up what you reported with what the contractor reports. If there's a discrepancy, like if a contractor forgets to report the income you paid them, the IRS will follow up with them, not you. That's why it's so important to be accurate with your 1099s. Keep copies of all your 1099s with your tax records. The IRS recommends keeping them for at least 3 years, but it makes sense to keep them for maybe 7 years just to be safe. Dealing with 1099s might seem like a lot of work at first, but once you understand the basics, it's really pretty straightforward. Remember, get those W-9s early, know the difference between employees and contractors, understand the threshold. It's $600 in 2025, $2,000 in 2026, and will be adjusted for inflation thereafter. Choose the right form and meet those annual January 31st deadlines. In the show notes below, we've included more resources you can use. If you found this video helpful, don't forget to subscribe. If you're still feeling uncertain about any of this, don't hesitate to reach out to a tax professional. Take care, and we'll see you next time.